So what is the problem what I see with dialogue choice? The problem is that it's never scale based or mechanically based like all other systems in games are. Like with first person shooters, you can be a shotgun, you can be a sniper, you can be a machine gun. All have different strategies and all have different places where they're more optimally used. You have movement patterns. What do we have with dialogue selection? We have a bunch of arbitrary choices that at best are defined by sort of vague emotional categories, but there's an emotional overlap between the category, like being mean or friendly, and then also the meaning of what you're saying, like are you giving a compliment or an insult? People think that's the same thing, and because of all of these overlaps of the Venn diagram of, meaning and expression and how they affect each other, it's been kind of decided by a lot of the elites of the dialogue or interactive fiction or storytelling world that you can't fundamentally systematize meaning without turning it into a toy language in which every word is exposed to be changed or have adjectives or verbs pulled out to the level at which a computer can understand. But the problem is that humans interact at a level that's way more complex than computers as far as nuance and even interpretation. The whole point is that a lot of sentences can be interpreted multiple ways. So how do you convey meaning to a player when you need to have nuance in what you're expressing to an AI character or what an AI character is expressing to the player? But to do that clearly would be to communicate to the player clearly would be to take away the nuance of the conversation that you're supposed to be immersed in, that you're supposed to be having fun with, the vagueness of that. So how do you express that? Well, you have to separate meaning from expression. And it's not by doing a toy language in which parts are swap outable. Ultimately, that's a dead trail in my opinion. If you try to swap out verbs or adjectives, all you've done is make those sentences extremely boring because there's no creative combination that creates a new meaning. You only have the sum of all those words together. But I believe meaning exists at the sentence level, at the maybe multiple sentence level, but at least at a sentence level, not at a word level. As we all know, words can be used for many different purposes. The word love can be used in all sorts of ranges or even sarcastically, and even to put someone down. And what are we supposed to do with that? Well, we need to stop looking at the words as the tools, the components of systematizing meaning. And why do we need to systematize meaning? We need to systematize meaning so that we can give the player consistent mechanics that are fair. If a bullet in a weapon in a first-person shooter does a random different amount of damage in a ridiculous sense, sometimes it does 0 damage, sometimes it does 100 damage, what's the point of that? Well, it's creating so much randomness that it becomes difficult to strategize around. Okay, sure, you can strategize around the randomness, but then so much is random that there's not that much skill happening. Is the player great for making use of that weapon? Are they stupid for trying to play coin flipper with that weapon choice? It gets so messy that it removes the player agency and kind of creative strategy when it gets that messy. And that's what's happening with conversations. So how do we do this? Well, because meaning exists at the sentence level, we need to have swappable components that exist at the sentence level. So we need to be able to change the different sentences. Okay, well, that maybe already exists, right? We have dialogue choices, which will be different words, but those are on too many different dimensions. So if your dialogue choice A and dialogue choice B have completely different meanings, then you can't effectively separate all the other components. The meaning component can only be separated by separating the expression component. So if you can express the same idea in multiple ways, if you ask a girl out in a confident way or in a shy way, or in a smart, clever, witty, quirky way, these all make differences. But as long as the idea is shared, then at the intersection between all these expressions, you get what the meaning is. That is the revolutionary approach that I'm taking with Double Demons, with the Electra dialogue system. Is up until now, meaning has been impossible to systematize, especially at a nuanced, like human conversation level. Sure, you can build a toy language based on sentence components and construct sentences that are technically grammatically correct, but at the level of nuance, of emotional relationship buildings, of conflict, and projection, and being guilty, wanting things, but having to, withhold certain information at that level, at the level that we all interact with in our actual lives, we need to be able to communicate meaning to the player without it being spelled out in a language. And the best way to do that is to spell out nuanced versions of that, which would be the natural conversation language that you would actually use in multiple dimensions. So if you have a shy way and a confident way to ask a girl out, at the intersection of that, you get the idea is I'm asking her out here, but the language can be much more subtle. It can be, are you doing anything later? That by itself could be interpreted many different ways, but by giving it an intersection across many different expressions, you now have communicated a strategic objective and a strategy, both for them to say what they mean, but in an expression type that resonates or makes sense mechanically.